Hello, and welcome to the dark side of YouTube. Today we're going to be taking a look at the history of the Addams family. Let's get into it. Okay, I can't do that voice for the whole video, so this is what you're going to be listening to. Not very spooky, but here we are. The Addams family was created by Charles Addams, which if you love the Addams, you probably know. Charles was born on January 7th of 1912. He had a mostly normal childhood with happy parents, a steady home, and a good school life. He always had a love for the dark and mysterious, though. In his hometown of Westfield, New Jersey, he was often surrounded by run-down old mansions and homes. He loved graveyards, the idea of who the people were and what happened to them. I too as a kid loved graveyards, the same as Charles. From a young age, Charles drew, usually dark things. So when he was in high school, Charles decided that he wanted to work for the newspaper. His first cartoon was sold to the New Yorker for $7.50, which today is worth about $134. He then would touch up crime scene drawings and cartoons for magazines, newspapers, often with odd touches such as snake hairs or weird animals or just sort of absurd humor. The Skier was the comic that raised him to fame. People were fascinated by it. The odd sort of thing you'd see on YouTube today as a ghost scare or proof. Something that's not quite real but still seems so believable somehow. In Hats Off Media's video, he mentioned that Addams even dated Jackie Kennedy not far after her husband's death, which is creepy, but fitting. Sadly, the Addams weren't his best ever ranking comics. They were produced throughout the 40s and 50s, and about 3,000 comics were made of his, but only 58 were the Addams family. In the 1950s, a show starring one Vampira would come out. A late-night host who bears striking resemblance to Morticia Addams, Vampira was wildly popular for her offbeat humor and dark tones. One day, David Levy, a producer, saw the characters from the Addams in the window and contacted Charles to work on a show about the characters. This would be based off of the hit from Vampira a decade earlier. At the time of the show's creation, the characters didn't have any set names or personalities, so Adam went to work and came up with names for them soon after the meeting. Pugsley was going to be named Pubert, but it was seen as too far out there for television at the time, and his name was changed to Pugsley. In the 1993 film The Addams Family Values, the baby would be named Pubert after that. Wednesday got her name from a poem, Wednesday's Child is Full of Woe, being the line. Morticia's name was named after, well, a mortician. As for the others, I'm unsure. In the 1964, Addams Family would become the best-selling TV show for a couple months. John Astin would be brought in for Gomez, Carolyn Jones for Morticia. She also famously dated Elvis for a while. Jackie Coogan was cast for Fester, and with his help, the children on set would have their money put away for when they were adults, rather than given to their parents, as he fought for this most of his life. Ted Cassidy would play Lurch, Mary Blake as Grandmama, Ken Weatherwax as Pugsley, and Lisa Loring as Wednesday. It was speculated that Jones and Astin had a thing for each other, but instead of playing it off screen and ruining their relationships or work life, they played their love through the characters, which, if true, is very prevalent on screen. The show would run for 64 episodes, 2 seasons, many of which you can find on YouTube. Thing in this iteration will live in a box, never leaving it. Mama would be Gomez's mother rather than Morticia. Wednesday would be the younger sibling, and Fester would be the uncle rather than Gomez's brother. The show would be the most light-hearted, family-friendly version of the Addams family to date, but it would still hint that Morticia and Gomez had a strong marriage, with scenes such as Gomez giving Morticia a black nightgown on their anniversary, them sharing a bed, which was very uncommon at the time, and Gomez's love of French leading for him to kiss Morticia's arms. At the same time, a show called The Munsters came out. They both ran for 2 years and hosted odd, spooky families with strong female leads and kooky grandparents. If you ask me, The Munsters are a ripoff of The Addams, but that's just my opinion. In 1966, with color TV becoming more popular and shows like Bewitched gaining popularity, The Addams would close off at only 2 seasons, along with The Munsters. The show would be rerun for a long time, even being the reason for the 1990 movies. But that's for later. In 1972 and 1973, the Addams would get appearances on The Scooby-Doo Show, soon followed by a Halloween with the New Addams Family in 1977, which is on YouTube if you want to watch it, featuring the old cast of the original Addams Family, with two new kids, Pugsley Jr. and Wednesday Jr. From then, the Addams would go for a long time unnoticed, until one day in the late 80s, a director was in the car with his family. The kids began to sing the Addams Family theme song, and everyone joined in. The kids knew it from their reruns, parents from the original show, and grandparents from the comics. It was the perfect idea for a movie. So in 1991, The Addams Family, starring Angelica Houston as Morticia, who had recently played another spooky role in Witches the year prior, Raul Julia as Gomez, Christopher Lloyd as Fester, Judith Molina as Grandmama, Christina Ricci as Wednesday, and Jimmy Workman as Pugsley. The film would be a smash hit, making 1,900,009 something 5,426, I'm terrible with numbers, at the box office worldwide, which sounds like a lot. This time it was rated PG-13, with darker tones, more romance between Morticia and Gomez, and a bigger emphasis on the children. Christina Ricci would be a standout in the movie. Her deadpan delivery of Wednesday came from watching Winona Ryder in the role of Beetlejuice. Ricci wasn't all, though. Angelica Houston became one of the hottest actors of the 90s, with people drooling over her performance as Morticia. So because of this, a sequel was made for 1993, The Addams Family Values. Sadly, although highly talked by of critics, The Addams Family Values performed poorly at the box office. With the death of Raul Julia in 1994 and the poor performance of the latest movie, The Addams was cancelled yet again. In many ways, this is sad, but having anyone else play Gomez would have destroyed the future movies. Not to worry though, in 1992, a cartoon of the Addams had begun, notably starring John Astin yet again as Gomez. The show would run for 2 seasons before being cancelled and doomed to the loop of TV reruns. 2 really seems to be a number that's common when it comes to the Addams. In 1998, a straight-to-DVD film, The Addams Family Reunion, would come out, only to perform very poorly and is mostly forgotten about by every Addams fan. Following this, a new Addams Family show would air in Canada and America. I actually like this show. The casting is good. It's a good mix of the 60s and 90s movie, and a mix of fun, cozy 60s vibes with the more darker, mature themes of the 90s. The show would do many remakes of the 1960 episodes while changing a few things and also making completely new scripts as well. In one episode, John Astin, pretty much a Addams Family legend at this point, even comes back to play Grandpapa Addams, a joy to all Addams fans. The show would run for 1 season, wow, not 2, before being cancelled. The Addams Family would be made into a Broadway film in the mid-2000s. That was it. It can be found on YouTube, a couple different versions, some from Broadway, some from just like high schools. For me, it's the fact that Wednesday is so un-Wednesday-y. She falls in love with a normal boy and actually ends up fighting with her parents, which is just weird. In 2010, an Addams Family movie directed by none other than Tim Burton would be announced but never came to be. Then in 2013, an animated Addams movie was picked up by Universal and made. It would star Oscar Isaac as Gomez, Charles Theron as Morticia, Nick Kroll as Fester, child actor star Finn Wolfhard as Pugsley, and Chloe Grace Moretz as Wednesday. Now, this movie, like the Broadway show, followed Wednesday wanting to be more like everyone else. It's said to be a good movie on its own, but bad as part of the Addams. Personally, I won't even watch it because it just isn't my cup of tea, although clips can be found of it on YouTube. The best thing about it is that Snoop Dogg voiced Cousin It. I mean, come on. The movie drew the characters in similar ways to Charles' original designs, yet somehow they come across as less spooky and gaunt and more ugly and unfinished. Overly big heads, weird proportions, and very big eyes. Nonetheless, in 2021, the movie would get a sequel, plainly called The Addams Family 2, where the Addams family goes on vacation. And that leads us to today. If you've been on the media at all lately, you've probably heard of Wednesday, the hit Netflix show directed by Tim Burton, finally. Starring Jenna Ortega as Wednesday, Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia, Louis Guzman as Gomez, Isaac Ordonez as Pugsley, and Emma Myers as Enid, Wednesday's newfound friend. Christina Ricci returns to the Addams world, this time playing the villain, Marilyn Thornhill. Which, honestly, I'm so glad she's in this. There had to be some sort of callback, and if it wasn't going to be John Astin, it had to be her. This is the first kind of supernatural we've seen in the way of the Addams. Of course, unbodied hands and people who can light light bulbs aren't normal, but this is our first time seeing vampires, werewolves, and sirens. The show, as the title states, mainly follows Wednesday, unlike other iterations, although the rest of the family does show up, minus the grandmama, and Lurch is there, but he doesn't really do much. Here's a fun fact for you. Larissa Weems, who is the principal, actually is in one of the original comics as a babysitter, which, if that is canon, means that they stayed friends after school, which is really sweet to me. The show was a major hit, and the Wednesday dance became quite a trend on TikTok, which I'm sure you've seen and are very sick of the fast-paced Bloody Mary. So the Addams family really have had their time in the spotlight lately, from the animated movies to Wednesday, and now the show is renewed for a second season. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the Addams family from here, but it is safe to say that this family isn't dying anytime soon. Personally, I think the 90s movies and the original 60s show is the best, and Wednesday isn't my favorite just because Morticia's my favorite character, and I don't like who they got to play Gomez. The rest of the Addams and Wednesday are just weird. And of course, there is the scandal with the guy that plays, what's his name? The weird sad dude. There's a scandal with him. And of course, Tim Burton, because they think that they can't put characters of color in and blah, blah, blah. But aside from that, that is the update on the Addams family. I hope you enjoyed this history of one of the most famous TV families. Honestly, the Addams are such a big part of my life, and I wanted to make this video. I did trip up a couple times because I am reading off a paper and I suck at reading, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would definitely like to know which one of the Addams iterations are your favorites. If you have ever seen any of these things, there is different iterations like the Addams Family Fun House, and I can't remember, there's something else. There's the Addams Family Fun House and some other weird spin-off in like the 70s and 80s, but I couldn't find like any information on them. So if you know anything about that, let me know. Let me know your favorite Addams Family character, and if you like these videos, and I will see you real soon. Have a spooky night.